What's up, my loves? Welcome back to another episode of the Fully Alive podcast. My name is Stephanie Elsperman. You are in the place where we talk about all things purpose, entrepreneurship, mindset, spirituality, and overall creating a life that makes you feel fully alive from the inside out. I'm excited. I've never done a life update in this space. And in this episode, I am going through an entire life update that honestly covers the last 16 months of life. Going from living in Denver, living my solo single life in the city, adventuring to the mountains, to living in Connecticut, being in relationship with Nolan again, living in a small town where we go antiquing on the weekends and we go to the farmer's market and we go for walks in the woods, and that is our life. And everything that kind of has led to this place and what living here and making this move and this entire shift in our lifestyle has led me through on a very personal level, and my own soul evolution that I've been moving through behind the scenes, and how that has been reflected in business and life and now how I see the world. And my intention with sharing all of this is that it's a little edgy for me. I'll be completely honest that as a coach and as a mentor, what I find my genius is extracting knowledge and putting it into a curriculum, a structure, a training to be able to give to you all. But just sharing a raw and honest life update is a whole other ballgame. And that's why we're doing it, is because for the sake of growth and evolution, that's an important thing to walk through. And I'm always a proponent of doing the things that stretch your edges. And so here's an edge of mine, out in the open, take it or leave it. And on the flip side, what I noticed and really what sparked all of this is I know I learn through hearing other people's life experiences. And there are very few places where we have just like raw and honest and open conversations. And my desire is that through listening to these life experiences, whether they relate to what you're going through or not, I hope that there's a nugget of wisdom that you get to take and apply to your life, or maybe just feel a little bit less alone within your own experience of just being a fucking human, which is wild. It's a weird thing to be a human, and super fun. So with all that said, let's head into the episode. The first life update on the pod. I feel like this is going to be a hefty life update because I haven't done one. So if you've been following me for a while and I've been in your world and you've been in mine, you've probably recognized that over the last 16 months have been wild changes. Wild with a capital W, like 180 sort of life changes. And I don't know if you see that from the outside, but that's how it feels internally. And my friends and I always have a joke that when you really dedicate yourself to growth, it feels like you live 5 lifetimes in the matter of a year or even a week sometimes. And that's really how it has felt, as I've felt this entire turbocharge happen to my life. And this is what I talk about a lot, is that when you have a big purpose, it's going to feel like your life happens really fast. Like there are going to be times where you see yourself doing one thing and you're on this one track, and then life is like, here's a massive up level. Let's take you in another direction. And it's going to feel like it happens fast. And to me, that's one of the most beautiful parts about having a purpose and being on this path of growth and evolution, is I get to experience a lot of different sides of life. And to give you kind of like the backstory of how we actually got here, let's start there. Because most people are like, Steph, you're living in Connecticut, you're with Nolan, like how the heck did all of this happen? And so I'm going to give you kind of the Cliff Notes version of the backstory of how we actually got here, because this is one of those moments where I could have absolutely never ever planned being here. Like I had a completely different vision for where I was going to be, what my environment was going to look like, what my relationship was going to look like, the opportunities in my life. Like I thought it was going to be completely different. And yet the universe has put us here, and it has been the most incredible blessing that we never knew that we needed. Like the most perfect and divine blessing. And to me, that's part of the magic of life, is just the mystery of not actually knowing what happens next. And every single time I think that I know exactly what's going to happen next, the universe is like, psych, it's not that, it's actually something better. It's something better. It's this or something better. That is one of the mantras that one of my first mentors blessed me with, of it's this or something better. Always. And being in Connecticut is truly the or better. But how we actually got here, if you have been following me for a little bit, you'll know that previously to Connecticut, I was in Denver Nolan was living in Northern California. He was running an art gallery with some friends out there outside of Lake Tahoe. And I was living in Denver. And I was living my little city girl life, building my business in my apartment, living solo, being single, getting to go to the mountains every single weekend. I had community around me. It was just an absolutely phenomenal time within my life that I'll look back on with such fond memories. And it's really where I feel like I grew into myself. I really understood after being in a relationship for 2.5 years. I understood what it was like to be alone and to be with myself. Because for those of you who don't know, Nolan and I were together for 2.5 years while we lived in St. Louis, Missouri, where we are both from and where we met. And then eventually we were called in different directions, both physically in our space, but we also knew that there were things that we needed to grow and evolve in that we could only do separately. And so while it didn't make any sense at all on paper, everything in our relationship was perfect. There was nothing that we could point to and say, this is wrong. It was that soul deeper calling of there's something else that I'm meant to learn right now. So we went through heartbreak. I moved out to Denver. He moved out to Northern California, and I lived my little single girl life and really held myself through heartbreak, understood who I was on a deeper level while I was alone, and expanded completely in my business. I got to play so much. Just like I see Denver as like the biggest playground where there's skiing and there's being in the mountains and there's being outside and all these things to do. And it was such an amazing period within my life that was like a landing pad, a real landing pad for the next evolution of myself. And then through a series of the most serendipitous events that once again I could have absolutely never planned out, truly never planned out, Nolan and I reconnected. And eventually I'll tell you guys the entire story because I know you've been asking me for it for a while. So maybe it'll be on the episode that I do with him. We'll see. But there's a story there, and it involves me driving myself 13 hours to Arizona to go see him. But that's a story for another day. Little hint. But nonetheless, we reconnected. And we started looking at like what would a 2.0 relationship look like for us if we decide to do this. Like, is this what we want? What would that look like? How does it feel? And while it didn't make any logical sense at all, once again, it was that deep soul calling of there's something here for us. Now that we have completely released the relationship, it allowed space for a new evolution to come, where we were basically like meeting each other for the first time again. There was a familiarity, yet we had both grown so massively that it was like, oh, hi, who are you? And getting to fall back in love all over again. And during that time when we met up and we were really looking at, what does the next evolution look like? Nolan also came to me and he was like, hey, I have this incredible opportunity to move to Connecticut. And I was like, Connecticut? Okay. Connecticut. Interesting. And it was so funny because at the time, he was in California, I was in Denver. I had envisioned us like moving further out west. That's where I thought both of our souls were calling us. I envisioned the entire thing, or I thought we were going to have, this entire lifestyle. And of course, life was like, nope, here's something different. And so Nolan was like, I have this incredible opportunity to take over an existing jewelry store that is in the area that he knew of through a family friend. And I was like, okay, so Connecticut. And even though it again did not make any logical sense, and even though my ego had its own preferences of like, but I thought we were gonna live someplace that was warm all year and by the ocean and have an apartment that looked like this, like I had my entire ego vision. But on the deeper level, once again, there was that soul calling of you cannot pass this up. Like, this is such a yes. And if we're going to do this and we're really going to commit to our growth together in partnership, then we're going to do it. Like, we're going to do it no matter what. And there was totally that logical part of my brain that was like, oh, well, maybe we'll see how it goes and we'll do long distance and I can live where I want. And I was just like, no, no. Like, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it. And put both feet all the way in. And it was absolutely fucking terrifying. It was so terrifying. And this is what most people don't talk about, is like, when your soul takes you in these different pivots, there's gonna be that part of you that knows. And then there's gonna be your ego that's like, what the fuck? Like, what is happening? And has these emotions. And most people will mistake their ego as truth. But in reality, their ego is just their mind. It is not truth. It is not something that you are meant to listen to and allow it to direct your life. Otherwise, it's going to direct it in all different directions that aren't actually true to your core. Yet, on a deeper level, there is a soul yes. That deeper, quiet knowing of, I know this is what we're meant for. Like, it would be so easy to look the other way and pass this up. But what if we did? Like, what if we looked back and we said, yeah, that was fucking wild, but we did it? That to me is the greatest feeling to live my life by, because it's really how you turbocharge your path. So knowing all of that, when he came to me with this opportunity, I knew that he couldn't pass it up. And I also knew that if he was doing it, I was going there too, because we were going to figure this out one way or another. And so he packed himself up, moved himself literally as far across the country as you could move, from Northern California to Connecticut, got himself settled here, and then came back and moved me from Denver to Connecticut. And so in the span of 4 months, from the time of when we started talking again and exploring our relationship, not even fully committing to our relationship, just exploring it, to then moving, that was 4 months. And I had some friends be like, Steph, isn't this a little fast? And I'm like, yep, but that's how we live our lives. And I had other friends who were like, yes, because the entire time that we were separated, most of my friends and family were rooting for Nolan, because anyone who meets that man falls in love with him. And he is absolutely just a gem of a human. And so I moved out here, and I remember getting to the house and touring the house and just being overcome with emotion. And I want to say that it was really good emotion. Like, I'm so grateful. This is so amazing. I'm at that place now in my life. I'm like, I'm so fucking grateful. I look at the trees and I just start crying because I'm so happy where we are. But at the time, I was looking around and being like, holy shoot, like, what did I get myself into? Because it was so starkly different than the life I had been living in Denver, living in my apartment, living this like somewhat city, but also mountainous life, to living in a small town where our house is so amazing. It was built in 1770, so it has all of this beautiful character, which I've fallen so madly in love with. But it was different, like completely different. And there's a slower pace. And we are some of the youngest people in the town. Who knows? We're still figuring it out. But nonetheless, it was so different than what my ego had envisioned. And so I was overcome with all of this emotion of like, oh my gosh, like we're really doing this, and this is different, and this is going to take adjustment. But at the same time, knowing that I was meant to be there, and knowing that if my soul was saying, yes, you're meant to be here, then regardless of my ego's preferences, there was something here for me. And I felt this calming sense of being home, even though it was different, even though I knew that there was going to be a lot to adjust to. And it felt like we were speeding up our lives like by 20 years, or let's say 10 years. So I knew that the universe had a plan for me. And now, fast forward 16 months, I feel like we can actually say that we're feeling more settled into our space. We feel like we actually understand the area where we are. It's starting to sink in like, yes, we are here. We are in Connecticut. And truthfully, I love it. But it's not what I expected. And I want to take you guys through like, what are all of the different things that aren't what I expected, yet happen to be the or betters. This or something better. The or betters that life had given us to show us something and kind of give you an update on my own process of how I've moved through this, in hopes that if you are going through a big transition within your life and you're in a place where you're like, I did not expect to be here, that there's something within this that you can hear from just my own processing and experience that you can apply to your own life. And so, to give you context on kind of how our life looks right now, it's so sweet. Like, it's truly so sweet. We live a very simple life. You know, Nolan and I are people who have so much energy in our businesses, so many ideas, so many things that we want to do. We love the people that we get to help, and we work in very different industries. He's in jewelry, and I am in coaching and mentoring and education. And yet, what we share is this sense of purpose and truly loving the work that we do, such that that is where a lot of our richness is in our relationship, in our work. We could be anywhere. And as long as we're doing the work and creating the things that we want to create in the world and impacting lives in the way that we want to impact, we would be absolutely happy anywhere. And that's the truth of it, is when you have purpose, like, you can take anything within your life because it's no longer make or break on the external environment needing to dictate your fulfillment. Like, we are truly at the core fulfilled human beings in who we are and in how we spend our time, such that it really doesn't matter the environment that we're in. Of course, the ego has preferences, but it doesn't matter because our lives are so rich. And so beyond what we do and building our businesses, our life is so simple and I love it. I'm a Cancer at heart. So, I like to be at home and I like to nest. And we go to the farmer's market on Sundays. We go for walks in the woods. There's beautiful hiking around here. We cook, we decorate the house, because having a house is like it's a whole different ball game. And something I didn't expect that we were going to have. And we're so grateful for. But it is a whole different ball game, which is fun. So we take care of the house. He runs a storefront out here. So that's something that's different. Is previously his entire business was online and mine was online. Mine is still completely online, and his now has a brick and mortar store. So that's a really fun thing to adjust to. I love having that dynamic and seeing how his business works in like the physical 3D brick and mortar. We learn so much through each other's industries, and I'm so fucking grateful. At one point I thought I wanted somebody who was like completely in the same industry as me, but I love that we get to have this crossover of our industries. And yeah, it's so simple. It is so simple and so rich at the same time. I feel like this past year and a half has completely redefined what rich actually means to me. Where previously I thought living a rich life meant everything that you have and all the things that you're doing and the events that you're going to and the glitz and the glam and what it looks like. And now, to me, richness is so in the simplicity. It's in being able to go outside and breathe fresh air and having nourishing food and a home garden and spaciousness in our days and freedom with our time and impact and truly loving and caring about the work that we do in this world and loving each other. Like, that to me is the deepest sense of richness. I've never felt more rich on a soul and energetic level than I ever have in my entire life. And that, to me, if that was the only thing I learned being here, it would be enough. Because one question I always say, and I say this to all of my clients, is if everything went away tomorrow, your business went away, your opportunities went away, everything went away, would you still be fulfilled? And if the answer is yes, amazing. You're filled up from the inside out. That is the basis of a magnetic business. But if the answer is no or not quite, then you've got some living to do, or you've got some reflecting to really start to recognize the parts of life that can be so simple. It's not about what you do or how many things and how glamorous your life looks, but how rich you feel in the simplest of moments. Can you be so filled up by that and to recognize the magic of just existing in this world and seeing all of the beauty that's around? And what I'll say is that this was not always how my brain thought. I'll be so honest, and if some of you have listened to the episodes that I recorded on my story, there have been multiple times in my life where I didn't really understand the point of being here anymore. That my brain was like, why are we here? And not really getting it and really making a choice to stay. And for the first time, like all the way deep in my bones and to my core, I recognize just the magic of life itself, of just life, beyond achievement, beyond what we do, just like life itself. And it's made every single other area of my life so much richer, so much more fulfilling, so much more creative than I could have ever thought. And it all starts in the simplicity. That's it. And so that was one of the gifts that I could have never imagined coming from this entire season. And it's created space for like a deep slowing down. Now that we don't necessarily have the distractions of all of these places that we need to be and things to do, and being in a city with stimulation, there is so much more space for my own nervous system to actually calm down and to get regulated. And through that regulation, there has been a deepening in my own connection with source. And to be completely honest, my entire business started from a very spiritual place. If any of you know my backstory, I started being a very hyper analytical human being, studying business and psychology, and then I got into spirituality. And it's really because spirituality saved my life, where I had a moment of waking up and feeling a greater presence that came over me. And it was from that point that there was no going back, that I knew that there was something spiritually that was a part of this lifetime. And ever since then, my connection with spirit and source has created the backbone and the foundation for everything that I do. It's where I have my guidance, it's my intuition, it is that deep soul knowing. And so being here and being in just the slowness of life and the spaciousness, especially in contrast to having so much happen within business and so much growth and so many things that we get to do, there's been a deep recentering and calming of the nervous system that has been confusing, to be completely honest, like very confusing, yet has also fortified everything that I know I do in work and in business, and allowed me to connect on a much deeper level. Now, how it's been confusing, let's talk about this. What's funny, and like my entire family makes fun of us for this, is I feel that our life has been completely sped up. So if you look at the quote unquote typical path, right, what I notice is that usually people will get together, whether it's in partnership or solo, and decide that they're ready for the next evolution of their life. They say, okay, so it's time to like settle down, have roots, maybe we'll buy a house, and let's see where we want to live, what's going to make sense, where we see our future, all of that good stuff. Like it's a very conscious decision that happens. Now, on the flip side, of course, this happens when you live a turbocharged life. Nolan and I were basically put into this beautiful next era of our life. And again, it's better than we could have ever imagined, but nonetheless, it's completely different. And so not only is he setting up a storefront, I'm running my business, but now we're like, so we have a house, which we were so grateful for. Like, we have a house, and a house needs to be taken care of, and there are things that need to happen, and the lawn and the garden and taking care of the entire place. And it's been so fun to get to like furnish a house and decorate and be in our small town life. And it's also been like an identity crisis of like, whoa, who are we now? We're still the same selves. We're still the same people who are building businesses that we first met in St. Louis. These young kids who just had dreams. But now we look around our life and we're like, who put us here? Like, who gave us the keys? What just happened? We're children. How are we doing this? And so in the beginning, we were just trying to get all of our ducks in a row, looking at all the different things that we needed to do to keep up this house and run our businesses and just figure it out. And then over time, it was almost like there was part of my identity that started to unravel. And it was this identity that I had clung to for so long around being, this boss babe who's hustling, who's in her apartment, independent, making her way for herself in the world. And work was like everything for me. Of course, I was playing, of course, I had balance, but like there was this clinging still to achievement, this clinging to this is what I do, and therefore this is who I am. And being here, I was open to another way where I started falling in love with just getting to be outside and getting to go to the market and cook nourishing foods and live in this slow pace. And I'll be honest that it has completely activated this side of my feminine that quite honestly I thought that I had lost touch with. And what that's allowed for is like this necessary releasing of an identity. And what's interesting is that you would see this, and typically you hear, identity crisis, and you're like, oh my God, something is completely wrong. But in reality, it's like when we cling to an identity, to me, that's the greatest form of stifling, whether you believe it or not. And the identity that you cling to dictates how much of life you actually get to experience. But when you're in the process of every single day getting to know who you are, and every single day understanding the side of yourself that wants to come to the table, and yes, being guided by a greater purpose, and that's the consistency, but getting to know these different identities that all exist within you. How I typically tell my clients is like, imagine that you were an infinitely faceted diamond, just absolutely incredibly sparkly. And every single time you turn that diamond, there's a new side of yourself that you get to see. And the more tightly that you cling to your identity and this one specific way of being in the world, the less you get to see of that entire beautiful diamond. But in fact, when you get to turn it and you get to see these different sides of your own identity, that is when there's a fullness that happens in your life. There's a magnetism that happens. And to me, it's part of the purpose of our growth and evolution is to get to understand all of these different sides. And so nonetheless, especially, growing a business and being in Denver, there was that part of myself that I was clinging so tightly to, which is the boss babe. I've got so many things that I want to do in this world. I had honestly lost touch with my desire to have a family. And I am so surrendered to whether it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We're okay with whatever life brings us. Yet if I look back at who I was as a kid, the only thing I ever wanted was to be a mom. And the only toys I ever played with, honestly, this is like very telling of my Cancer nature, were baby dolls. Like that was it. I just played house. That was it. My sister was drawing and doing sports. I was literally playing with dolls. And I had lost touch with that for a while, just the desire to have that evolution of life. And I knew in my heart of hearts that that meant that something was off. I wasn't ready to address it, but I knew that something was off. I had lost touch with that desire, that I was clinging so tightly to a version of myself that I felt like I needed to be, and not allowing for these other sides to come to the surface. And so being in Connecticut, it was basically like a mind fuck because all of these other sides of myself started coming back up to the surface. And I was like, well, what does this mean? Of course, the mind goes straight into, so what does this mean? Does this mean that I'm, supposed to do X, Y, and Z? Like, what does this mean? And so for a long time, I resisted looking at this other side that wanted to come to play, this side of my feminine that wanted to go to the market and cook food and nest and decorate our space and envision a family and a future and garden and like all of these different sides. I resisted it completely because I was like, well, if I go into that, what does it mean about my purpose and the work that I do in this world? And that's the truth of like the questioning that I was moving through. And once I finally got to the place of surrender, where I was like, you know what if I don't know who I am? Like, what if I actually don't know what I want? What if it's this, or what if it's that? What if I just desire having a simple life? And I actually let myself finally fully release my identity that I had created as a business owner and a boss babe and somebody who's doing X, Y, and Z. Once I finally let myself release that, that's when everything became clear. And I see this so often. It's like so many times I'll have clients who are so afraid of looking at another way of doing things that they'll keep themselves in the same patterns, in the same loops, doing the same things. And I see this so often where many times humans will be so afraid of exploring another idea or another possibility that they'll keep themselves in the dark, doing the same things over and over and over. Yet the universe is like, hey, but the minute you surrender that you actually don't know, you get to have it all. Like you actually get to have it all. And it becomes way more clear. And that's what I started to recognize, that once I finally got to that place of fully releasing and being like, you know what, maybe I just want to have kids. Like, what if I just want to have a simple life and we homestead and we do all these things? Once I got to that place, that was when everything became clear of like, well, fuck no. That's not the only thing I'm meant to do in this world, because I have the heartbeat of purpose that moves through my body. But now it's on a deeper level. Because before it was like, yes, I have purpose. And also I have to be this specific version of myself that's a business owner and a boss and doing all these things, the high achiever, constantly going. And then I have purpose. But in releasing that identity and just allowing myself to explore different desires, there's a deeper sense of purpose, because it's no longer this clinging to an identity out of fear of seeing anything else and out of fear of not knowing who I am, but getting to go to these different crevices of who I am and my own identity to then come to a deeper understanding of, well, I don't have to do this work to be on purpose. And that's what I tell every single one of my clients, especially in purpose mastery. You do not have to do anything to be on purpose in this world. You can have a business, you can speak on stages, you can write a book, or you can go work as a cashier at Trader Joe's. Or you can just sit on a park bench and you will still have purpose. Purpose is who you are. It's what you be every single day. It's not what you do. What you do is just one facet of your work in this world. And so in releasing almost the idea of like, oh my God, what do I want? Like, what do I actually fucking want? There's a deeper sense of purpose that came through. I'm like, purpose is who I am and the movement and the mission that I stand for. And of course, I'm in this work for my entire life. I've never been more sure of one thing. This is the true work that is my heart's calling, and that this is the true work that I'm meant to do in this world. And in fact, there's a greater sense of being ignited because, again, it's no longer out of fear. It's out of full truth and understanding of like, if I didn't have this, I'd be completely bored. So fucking bored. And there'd be a deeper ache for more. Because I look at, if I were to live a very simple life and completely offline and get to be in the garden, of course it would be absolutely incredible. But there would be a part of me that would be so fucking bored. Because I know that on the deepest level, if you look at my numerology, my astrology, my purpose, everything, it's to build. And that's where I feel most like myself. And that there's something so incredible about having a purpose that is like a heartbeat that moves through my entire life, and work that feels creative and igniting, and clients who are like my absolute fucking soulmates. Like it is the most incredible relationship and experience that I'll ever get to be in. And that is where my creativity comes in. And yet at the same time, what I've come to understand is I want it all. I want it all. Like, I thought I had to choose of like, oh, well, you're either this woman who has a business and is a boss babe, or you're, raising a family and you're living the slow life that's offline and doing the things. And I thought that I needed to choose between both of them, if you're either one or the other, because that was really all that I ever had examples for. I had examples of the ones who work, and I had examples of the ones who are like my mom, because we really don't have examples of women who have it all. Like, I didn't have an example of somebody in my life who was a mom and had a business and had spaciousness with their time and got to do things around the house and like feel really good and fulfilled. I didn't really have examples of that within my life. And so now, in the space of fully surrendering everything, I'm in the space of, well, I want it all. Like, I truly want it all. I love the work that I do in the business and the projects and the vision that I have moving forward. I want a family. I love our slow pace of life. I love having time freedom. I love the spaciousness. I love getting to be in our house. And quite honestly, I'm very introverted, so I love being here. I love getting to go for walks. I love not living in a city. I love all of the different sides of myself that come to the table, and who fucking knows how they all combine. And that's, I think, one of the most incredible mysteries, yet they are all welcome. They are all completely welcome, because sides of your identity do not dictate who you are. They just add richness to your entire life. And on the edge of the void and not knowing is exactly where the most incredible creation comes from. And so at this point in my life, I feel more me and more in touch than I've ever felt. And I'm so fucking excited to see what comes of this, and to look back on even this podcast episode and be like, holy shit, life took you in another 180. Because isn't that what life does? And to really see the growth that comes out of being in the void. And how I define the void is when the old way of doing things no longer resonates, but you don't exactly know who you are or what's happening next. And you're kind of in this in-between space. And I remember the first time I was really experiencing a void within myself, and it was when I was thinking of transitioning from Denver to here. And I was like, I feel like I am in the void. I don't really know what's happening next. This is just like all completely new. And for the first time, I don't really know who I am. And I remember bringing this to my mentor, Shoshana, at the time. And she was like, well, welcome to the rest of your life. Because if you are truly creating something new, every single day you are in the void. Every single day, what you've done no longer resonates and you are doing something in a new way. Every single day, you get to understand the different sides of yourself that want to come to the table. Every single day, you get to know yourself. That's the most beautiful thing. That's where true original creation actually comes from. And so while I used to see the void as something that is negative, and I think a lot of people can see that, now I welcome it of like, I better be in the void. I better be learning something new about myself every single day and questioning and looking at these different sides. Otherwise, am I actually living a true life, or am I living a shell of who I think I'm supposed to be for X, Y, and Z identity, or to fulfill some sort of societal expectation? Who am I actually living for? And can I get comfortable with being in constant evolution? That's going to allow the most incredible growth and the turbocharging and the ideas to come through that are unlike anything that's ever been created before. That's where true creation actually lies, is from not knowing. And so life feels incredibly stable and the sweetest that it has ever felt, the most home it's ever felt. I feel home. My relationship with Nolan is absolutely phenomenal and is the backbone of so much love and so much growth in my life. Business is amazing and it feels more creative and more alive than it's felt. And yet, who knows what happens next? So we'll see. So this weekend, we have Nolan's family that's coming to visit us. One of the sweetest parts about, nesting and like having a home and creating a home, it's like a whole different era, is we get to have family here. And for me, especially being a young person, like I've never had a space to really get to like invite family over and host. And it's such a fun part of the entire experience. So Nolan's family is coming over. His brother and his brother's girlfriend are coming to visit, and I absolutely love them. And we're gonna have fun and maybe pick some apples. And now I go vintage shopping. We go to antique markets. We go to the farm. We go, where else do we go? We're by the ocean, which is amazing. Like it is really just such a sweet, sweet life. So that's the entire life update. From moving from Denver to being here, the whole story. I can't wait to hear your responses. As always, as you listen to this, let me know what drops in for you. Let me know what resonates. If you want more of these life updates, I love sharing the entire process and journey with you and really living life with you. So, my dears, I hope you have the most phenomenal rest of your day. Cheers to understanding all different sides of yourself, and I will see you in the next episode.